Good morning, my precious pecan sandies. Welcome to today's episode of Why Come No One Told Me That. Today we are talking about how to conceal acne so that your skin still looks like you don't have a ton of makeup on. My skin is on the mend right now. I recently went through an experimental phase where I experimented with being really stressed out and not following my own advice. So I was breaking out kind of a lot. And I was still getting compliments on my skin when I had makeup on. I actually, well, maybe this palette knife isn't the best choice for you to play with. I went to a friend's house and she was like, oh my gosh, your skin looks so amazing. And I was like, okay. And then she saw me the next day with no makeup on and she was like, wow, I really didn't, please don't break things. I really didn't know that your skin was like that. And she said it in a nice way. I just made my friend sound like really, really rude and condescending. I promise it wasn't, because I was kind of like, no, really, my skin is not in good shape right now. But it made me think that this is probably a good area to focus on, because acne is the shittiest thing ever. It really is the worst, and it just sucks your confidence. And I always think that the best thing is to try to get rid of your acne, but sometimes, as I have just shown with my own life example, even when you know the things that you should do to fix your skin, you know, it's stuff that is hard, like having a good diet and exercise and taking care of yourself and doing these different steps. And sometimes life is hard and it's too much, and you end up with skin that's breaking out and it makes everything worse. And so here are some tips that you can use to still be able to feel confident and relaxed even when your face is mad at you. All right, so first of all, let's talk a little bit about the way that we mentally approach concealer. I personally like to, instead of thinking of it as a separate thing from foundation, I just view it as kind of an extension of foundation, because it's really the same thing. It's just a more targeted application. The only difference between foundation and concealer really is that there's a lot more pigment in concealer. So with that in mind, it's super important to go back and watch the videos leading up to this one that have talked about everything from skincare through foundation, because I think as we get into this series deeper and the information really starts to build on itself, it's very important to make sure that you're caught up so that you can really get the most out of the video, because my options were basically make one video that's like 17 hours long, or do these little targeted ones that kind of build off of each other. So I'll put the videos in the description box that are relevant to this one, but especially when we're talking about all this complexion stuff, it's really all kind of needs to be taken together for you to have the most success. Obviously, when we do videos on things like lips, you're not necessarily gonna have to have watched a bunch of other videos to get everything out of that, but for everything related to the skin, it all kind of is one thingy. There is some overlap between the foundation video and this one, because as I said, this is really just like a more targeted extension of your foundation. And so I'm going to give just some quick little recaps of the previous videos. All right, so moving along, I have kind of 3 sort of golden rules when it comes to foundation or concealer, and they all fall under the umbrella of less is more. The first one is that if you have a choice between a fuller coverage product that you can use a light layer of, or a lighter coverage product that you have to build, I would always recommend choosing the fuller coverage product, because our goal is to work in light layers and put as little stuff on the face as possible. That's going to make it a lot more comfortable to wear. It's going to wear better throughout the day, and there's really no way around if you have a lot of stuff on your face. It's just gonna look like you have a lot of stuff on your face when you are walking around in person and people's naked eyeballs are looking at your naked or not actually super naked face. So for example, if you could get away with a thin layer of a medium or full coverage foundation, but you would have to build a couple layers to get the coverage that you want of a tinted moisturizer or a light coverage foundation, then I would say go with the medium or full coverage foundation. The next thing is that there's no reason why you need to apply the same amount of foundation or concealer to your entire face. You can taper the coverage so that you put more product in the areas where you need to conceal something, and you can put less product or no product in the areas that are clearer, and that kind of tricks people's eyes into thinking that you don't have full coverage makeup on at all, and that's kind of the point, right? Yeah. And then the last thing is in areas where you want to build coverage or you have texture issues, which acne tends to have a texture to it that is not necessarily the most pleasant thing. You want to use a dabbing motion, and in areas that are smooth or you want sheer coverage, you want to use a sweeping motion. Okay, so first of all, anytime we're working with complexion makeup, it's super important that you prep and prime your skin so that everything can blend smoothly. The specifics of how you prime your face is going to depend on your skin type, but the two things that are true regardless of your skin type are that you need to exfoliate your skin regularly to remove as much texture as possible, preferably with a chemical exfoliant, and you need to hydrate with a moisturizer. If you have oilier skin, you're going to use a more lightweight moisturizer, and if you have drier skin, you're going to use a more emollient moisturizer. In my case, my skin is normal to dry, and it is extra dry right now because it's winter time, so I've already applied my just sort of like medium weight moisturizer with SPF in it, and now I'm going to use a little bit of a facial oil. I'm going to massage that into my drier places. Okay, I'm just going to warm this up in my hands, and then I'm going to press it in. As I mentioned before, acne does typically go along with texture. Fun times. And makeup has limitations with texture. You can only do so much, but I think the best practice is to kind of make sure that the area is really, really hydrated. That's another thing. A lot of people assume that if they have acne, that means they have oily skin, and so they tend to do things that make their skin even drier, when the reality is that acne can be caused by a lot of things. You might have had dry skin to begin with, and then you're using a lot of stripping products, and it can just really exacerbate the issue. So don't be afraid to hydrate if you are breaking out. So going back to what I was saying, you want to make sure that you've hydrated any areas that still have texture. And then in the most extreme cases, that's when I'll use like a thin layer of a silicone primer and just sort of like tap it onto the texture as like a temporary band-aid, but really want to address those kinds of things with your skincare so that eventually you can move away from having to try to fix it with your makeup. Okay, so now that my face is primed and I can feel that it's really hydrated and smooth, and I'm gonna have an easy time blending my different products on top of it, let's talk a little bit about the order in which we do foundation and concealer. I think that the best case scenario is when your concealer color matches your foundation color very closely, if not perfectly, and you can apply your foundation first, because that's going to knock out a lot of the issues, and then you can see where do I actually really need to put concealer to get the coverage that I want. I find that you use less product that way. However, if you don't have a perfect match with your concealer, there's nothing wrong with applying that first. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, there's nothing wrong with applying your concealer first. Just make sure that you don't go overboard concealing every little thing that might end up being able to be covered with your foundation. And when you apply your foundation on top of your concealer, just be careful that you use a dabbing motion as opposed to a sweeping motion, because it would be a shame if you did all this nice concealing work and then you just swiped right over it with your foundation and messed up all of your beautiful blending. More on that later. So I'm going to apply my foundation according to the methods that I outlined in my last video. I'm gonna use a damp beauty blender with the Face Atelier Ultra Foundation because it's a good kind of hydrating liquid foundation, so it's a good match for my skin type. And I'm just going to dab that in the areas where I need coverage. I know this is getting repetitive. And then without adding more, I'm just kind of softly sweeping into the areas where I don't necessarily really need coverage. Okay, so now that I've evened everything out and I've kind of tapered my coverage, like I said, so that I don't have very much product on my cheeks and forehead, but I've got a little more on the areas that really need to be concealed, I can clearly see the spots where I definitely am going to need some concealer to conceal the thing that's on my face that I don't want to be there. When it comes to concealing acne, I personally prefer to use products that are super, super pigmented creams. My favorites are the Laura Mercier Secret Camouflage, Kevyn Aucoin's Sensual Skin Enhancer, and the Kryolan Dermablend. I like all of those because they have really good color selections and so much pigment. A quick comparison, just in case you guys are interested in those ones, just to help you know which one would be best for you. The Kevyn Aucoin Sensual Skin Enhancer is relatively easy to find. Some Sephoras carry it, not very many, but usually places like Nordstrom tend to have it. They're all pretty expensive, but the Kevyn Aucoin one, it comes with a lot of product and you only need a tiny amount. It's definitely the creamiest formula. So if you've got drier skin, that's probably going to be the one that you're happiest with. The Kryolan Dermablend you pretty much need to buy online unless you happen to live in LA or New York and have access to one of the professional makeup stores. And that's a really great product. It is the most pigmented. It's like medical grade concealer. It's really fantastic product. And then the Laura Mercier is the easiest one to get your hands on because most Sephora's carry it. It comes with 2 shades you can kind of mix, which is really awesome. And a note about it is that it seems really, really dry, and so you kind of have to warm it up a little bit to use it, but it's very effective and a great product for people with oily skin. But really, any of those 3 products are fantastic. I use them interchangeably. When it comes to choosing a tool, all that really matters is that you find something that you personally find easy to blend with. Usually that's going to mean a more rounded shape as opposed to something that comes to an extreme point or has an angle on it, and that has a size appropriate for the area that you're trying to conceal, just for the sake of efficiency. So for example, if I'm just trying to conceal one little pimple, then I'll use, you know, like a little brush that's got a nice domed shape so that I can just like and blend out the edges. If I'm concealing a larger area, or like today I'm going to be using this back of this It Cosmetics brush that's like, you know, it's not so tiny, but I have some kind of like bigger spots that I want to conceal, so it just makes sense for me to use something that is close to the size of what I'm trying to conceal. And if you have a big area where spot concealing would be really tedious, sometimes I'll just use my beauty blender and I'll tap over that area. Like I might do that down here where I have like several problem spots all congregating together trying to organize a rally against me. All right, now I'm going to show you how I conceal these sons of bitches. So I am just going to dab into a little bit of Kryolan Dermablend that is the same color as my foundation with my brush, and I'm going to, it's actually really easy to do. I'm just going to dab over the areas that I need to conceal. And I'm going to make sure that I cover the spot and then a little bit surrounding the spot, and then I blend out the edge. And the reason that we cover not just the spot itself, but also the area around it, is that gives us some space to blend that edge without having to actually affect the coverage of the spot itself. So if I were to put just concealer right on the spot itself, then when I go to kind of blend the edge out, I'm going to be removing some of the coverage from the spot. So you want to do on the spot, a little bit around it, and then just softly blend out the edge. It's super easy. So I'm just going to do that in a few more spots. And it's not like something you have to be really precise with. You can just kind of dab over the area, soften the edge a little bit. I don't know if you can see on camera super well here, but I have my skin has been really bad lately, and it's starting to clear up now because I'm actually taking care of it. Amazing how that works. And so I have some spots that are not like active breakouts, but just, you know, I recently had a breakout there. So I'm just kind of going over those little areas. And I don't know if you can really tell, but I'm kind of just like press, dab, and then just cleaning up the edge. And the reason we do it this way is so that there's a nice gradient from full coverage to lighter coverage so that people can't really tell that there's an area that's been concealed. Tricky. Let's get this motherfucker. Okay, so in this area, like I said, I have a lot going on, so I'm just going to use my beauty blender because it's quicker. All right, so that's really all there is to it. If you were in a situation where you did this and you found, you know what, my concealer isn't actually a perfect match for my foundation, all you would do in that situation is dab a little bit of your foundation onto your beauty blender and then just with as little as possible go over the top and kind of blend it all together so that's a little more cohesive. This also feels like a good time to mention color correcting concealers. Color correcting is a really important tool for things like covering tattoos or extreme hyperpigmentation. Sometimes you can do subtle color correction with under eye circles. When it comes to color correcting acne with like green concealers and primers, I have no interest in that. I think it's totally unnecessary. Formulations for foundation and concealer are so good now that you can get really great coverage and not need to be color correcting for acne, because when you're color correcting tattoos, hyperpigmentation, or under eye circles, you're using like salmon tones and colors that are not super far removed from what's naturally found in your skin, and so it's not a big deal to introduce those in. However, when you are putting like green shit on your face, it's just like no, it's just not necessary. So if you do it and it makes you happy, then I'm so happy for you that you're happy. But if you aren't doing it and you think that that's something you need to try, just don't worry about it. The last thing I wanted to mention when it comes to concealing acne specifically is that shine tends to draw attention. And so it's a good idea to put some translucent oil absorbing powder if you have any kind of like glossiness or shine because of oily skin or creamy products. So my favorite is the RCMA no color powder. It's like probably every makeup artist of the earth. And so I don't actually really have shine right now, but just to kind of show you how that would go. Be careful with overdoing it, because if you dry out all of the products underneath, that's really going to exacerbate any texture that's showing from the acne. So use a light hand, just always. I know I use the words light and thin and subtle probably way too much, but that's just how I roll. So pretending that I have shine in these areas, I would just really, really softly touch a little bit of translucent powder onto those areas just to make sure that they're not reflective and drawing more attention to themselves than they need to be. Okay, I'm going to put on the rest of my face and I'll see you in a moment. All right, as always, I hope that this was helpful. If you have questions, please let me know in the comments. And if you liked this video, you should hitchhike. And if you didn't like it, just speak your truth. Do it. Don't forget to follow me on Snapchat, Instagram, and Twitter at Kiki Makeup. I'm not just saying that because I want more followers. I'm saying that because it's scientifically proven to be good for your health. And also, all of my social media accounts were included on Oprah's favorites list for the past 15 years running. Oh, and you should subscribe to this channel, or else everywhere you go will smell like an Abercrombie & Fitch, and everybody can smell it, not just you. And there's no way to like turn it off for when it's like a super inappropriate time, like you're at a funeral or sitting in on a surgery. Like there's just no way around it. It would be very distracting and it would make you feel super pukey. So you should subscribe and stay updated on this series, because we're gonna be going through all the face stuff and it's gonna be a really good time. So I'll see you in a few days, and may the force be with you.